Simone Ridinger, 1977, Natick. Why did a waitress vanish after one final shift? Every disappearance leaves behind a silence, but some silences are harder to explain than others. They do not begin with a storm or a scream or a scene that immediately tells the world something terrible has happened. Sometimes they begin at the end of a normal workday, when a young woman changes out of her uniform, picks up a small bag, and steps outside, believing she is simply on her way to meet her family. That is what makes the disappearance of Simone Ridinger so unsettling. On Friday, September 2, 1977, Simone was 17 years old, working as a waitress at the Rainbow Restaurant in Natick, Massachusetts. Her plan was straightforward. She intended to leave work, travel toward Cape Cod, and continue on to Martha's Vineyard, where her family was spending Labor Day weekend. But Simone never arrived, and almost half a century later, investigators are still left with the same question that has followed this case from the beginning. How far did she get before something went wrong? The story begins in Sherburne, Massachusetts, a quiet town west of Boston where Simone lived with her family. According to later reporting, Simone was born Simone Barrett and was later adopted by John Ridinger after her mother remarried. She was remembered by those close to her as independent, artistic, and difficult to place inside any ordinary routine. She played guitar, wore bohemian clothing, and liked silver and turquoise jewelry. Friends and family described her as a free spirit, the kind of teenager who seemed to move through life with her own rhythm. That independence was part of who Simone was, but it also became part of the risk surrounding her final known day. Simone was known to hitchhike. According to Detective James Godinho of the Sherburne Police Department, she hitchhiked to and from work, to and from school, and around the area as part of her normal life. In the 1970s, hitchhiking was far more common than it is today, but the distance Simone planned to travel that weekend was still enough to concern people who knew her. Cape Cod was not just a short ride away, it was a long route from the Sherburne and Framingham area, and she would be relying on strangers. On the afternoon she disappeared, Simone was working at the Rainbow Restaurant at 9 South Main Street in Natick. It was a familiar place, and for her family, it became the last solid point on the map. Her sister, Betsy Bailey, later recalled visiting the restaurant for lunch that Friday, as she often did. Simone told her and others that she was heading to Martha's Vineyard to spend the holiday weekend with her mother at Chappaquiddick. At the time, nothing about the conversation appeared alarming. It sounded like a teenager making weekend plans before the last days of summer slipped away. Around 3 p.m., Simone finished her shift. The waitress uniform at the Rainbow Restaurant was described as a blue pullover vest and a blue skirt. After work, Simone changed clothes and put the uniform into a small gray army-style duffel bag. Former coworkers would later remember that she left wearing blue jeans, white high-top sneakers, and a shirt or top described in different accounts as white or blue. She had the gray bag with her. Then she stepped away from the restaurant and began the journey she believed would take her to her family. From that point, the certainty ends. Simone intended to hitchhike toward Cape Cod, where she could continue on to Martha's Vineyard, but no confirmed record places her on a ferry, no confirmed witness saw her reach the family, and no message ever came explaining a delay. Her family did not immediately panic when she failed to appear. That detail may seem strange now, but it fits what people knew about Simone. She could change plans. She could be late. She might stop to visit friends, miss a connection, or decide to go somewhere else entirely. For a short time, there was still room for ordinary explanations. Maybe she had taken longer than expected. Maybe she had stayed somewhere overnight. Maybe she would be back in Sherborne when the family returned. But when the holiday weekend passed and Simone still had not come home, concern turned into fear. Her family began searching for answers, contacting people, and trying to reconstruct her movements. The trail led back to the same place again and again, the Rainbow Restaurant in Natick, where she had last been confirmed alive. In those early days, investigators had very little to work with. Simone had not left behind a clear route, a known driver, or a confirmed destination beyond her family's plans. Hitchhiking made the investigation especially difficult. She could have entered any vehicle. She could have spoken to several drivers. She could have traveled a few miles or most of the way to Cape Cod before vanishing. Without a body, a crime scene, or an immediate suspect, the case became a mystery built around absence. Then, in 1986, nearly 9 years after Simone disappeared, a man came forward with a story that reopened the possibilities. He was 79 years old and told Sherborne police that he had read an article about Simone's case and recognized her photograph. According to his account, on the morning of Saturday, September 3, 1977, he had been driving to Osterville, Massachusetts, to pick up clock parts when a state trooper stopped him on Route 128, south of Boston. The man said there was a young woman in the trooper's cruiser. After learning he was headed toward Cape Cod, the trooper allegedly asked if he could give the girl a ride in that direction. The man agreed. He later told police he drove her to the airport rotary in Hyannis near Route 28 and dropped her off there. If the girl was Simone, it would mean she survived the first stage of her trip and made it much closer to Martha's Vineyard than anyone could prove at the time. The account was difficult to evaluate. It came years after the disappearance, and memories can weaken with time. But the man gave details that made investigators take notice. He described the young woman as wearing blue jeans, white sneakers, and a blue top or blouse. He remembered a grayish duffel bag and noticeable jewelry. These details mattered because they were not random. They resembled what Simone's co-workers would later say she had with her when she left the Rainbow Restaurant. For years, that witness statement remained one of the case's most intriguing clues, but it could not be fully confirmed. Police could not prove the man had actually driven Simone. They could not identify the trooper in the story. They could not place Simone at the airport rotary beyond his account. Still, the possibility changed the shape of the mystery. If Simone reached Hyannis, then the search for what happened to her could not remain focused only near Natick. It had to stretch toward Cape Cod. In 2014, Detective James Godinho took over Simone's case and began looking at it again. He reviewed the old files, read through the narratives, and searched for people who had known Simone during that final period of her life. Instead of finding an easy explanation, he found gaps that still needed answers. One of the most meaningful steps came when investigators tracked down former employees of the Rainbow Restaurant who had worked with Simone on the day she disappeared. Those former co-workers described Simone's clothing and bag, and their memories aligned closely with the man's 1986 statement. That did not prove his story, but it made the old lead much harder to ignore. The description had not been widely publicized in detail before, according to case information later cited in reporting. For investigators, that raised the possibility that the man had truly encountered Simone on the morning after she left Natick. If he did, the case turns in a different direction. Simone may not have vanished immediately after leaving work. She may have made it down the highway, reached the Cape area, and arrived at a busy rotary in Hyannis with her destination almost within reach. From there, she could have tried to find another ride, searched for transportation to Martha's Vineyard, or continued walking through a place full of travelers at the end of summer. Somewhere after that point, if the account was accurate, she disappeared again. That second disappearance is the part investigators still cannot explain. No confirmed ferry record has publicly answered it. No witness has come forward with a proven final sighting beyond the Hyannis account. No remains have been found. The gray duffel bag, her jewelry, and the clothing descriptions have become fragments of a larger picture, but the center of that picture remains missing. Over the years, different possibilities have been considered. One theory is that Simone never made it far from Natick and encountered danger soon after leaving the restaurant. Another is that she reached Cape Cod and was harmed after being dropped in Hyannis. A third possibility is that someone saw her that weekend but never realized the importance of the sighting. In a case involving hitchhiking, every unknown driver becomes a possible turning point, and every unreported memory becomes a lost chance. In 2025, a new public lead brought another name into the discussion: Eric H. Anderson, Jr. A retired Massachusetts State Police Detective Lieutenant, Rick Nagel, read a Boston Globe cold case files story about Simone and believed Anderson should be examined as a possible person of interest if Simone had reached Cape Cod. Anderson's history made the suggestion disturbing. In 1977, Ruth Masters was murdered in Miles Standish State Forest in Plymouth, and investigators later linked Anderson to that killing. That same year, he picked up a female hitchhiker near the Sagamore Bridge in Bourne. According to Nagel's account in Boston.com reporting, Anderson drove the woman to the Manomet Bird Observatory area, threatened her with a knife, and tied her up. She escaped by jumping from the car and later identified him. The possible connection to Simone has not been proven. No public evidence has established that Anderson met her, gave her a ride, or caused her disappearance. Sherburne Police Detective Andrew Richard said that if investigators could determine Simone made it down to the Cape that weekend, Anderson would be a person of interest. That distinction matters. It is not a solved case. It is a theory based on geography, timing, behavior, and Anderson's known violence. But in a case with so few answers, even a possible direction carries weight. Today, Simone Ridinger remains missing. She was 17 when she vanished. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children later released an age progression showing what she may have looked like as an older adult, a reminder that behind the cold case is a life interrupted. Simone was a daughter, a sister, a musician, a young woman remembered for her independence and movement. She expected to spend Labor Day weekend with her family. Instead, her name became tied to a road, a restaurant, a gray bag, and a question no one has been able to close. The known facts are narrow, but they are powerful. Simone left the Rainbow Restaurant in Natick on September 2, 1977, around 3 p.m. She planned to travel toward Cape Cod and then Martha's Vineyard. A man later claimed he drove a girl matching her description to Hyannis the next morning. Former co-workers later confirmed details that matched his memory. Investigators have continued to seek information, including any memory from people who may have been in the Cape Cod area during Labor Day weekend in 1977. The hardest part of Simone's case is how close she may have been to safety. If the witness was mistaken, then her final moments may have happened somewhere along the route from Natick. If he was right, she made it close to the place where she could continue to her family. Either way, someone may have seen her, spoken to her, or watched her get into a vehicle without knowing they were witnessing a moment that would matter for decades. Somewhere in the missing hours between Natick, Route 128, Hyannis, and Martha's Vineyard lies the answer. A brief ride, a forgotten face, a roadside encounter, a memory someone may still carry without realizing its value. Until that piece is found, Simone Ridinger's disappearance remains one of Massachusetts' unresolved mysteries, suspended between an ordinary afternoon and the unknown road that followed.